Gate. As you know, in the 2014 NFL playoffs, Tom Brady and the Patriots basically had a beatdown of took the Indianapolis Colts to task. And in that game, of course, after that game took place, there were accusations by the Colts and several people in the NFL that the footballs were illegally deflated below the legal parameters. And therefore, Tom Brady's judgment and character was called into question along with the entire Patriots. This is not the first time. You remember Spygate in 2007. But what happened? Every time that the Patriots were accused of something, no matter what, they seemed to thrive and get better and win. Because they always like to prove people that we're not really like that. But getting back to the Deflategate story itself, Tom Brady was, of course, questioned by the NFL. They did their investigation. They found out certain trainers were involved and had to be released. Therefore, with the findings they had on Tom Brady, Commissioner Goodell concluded to suspend it for 4 games. That decision, of course, was appealed. And then you had Richard Berman, the federal judge who basically overruled that decision and overturned Goodell's initial suspension. Then, after that took place,
you had another appeal, so they had to go back into the courts, and as it turns out, the suspension wound up being put back in place, so Brady's going to miss the first 4 weeks of the season.
I know, which is really not kosher to say the least.
To be quite honest with you, I've really had my fill of Deflategate right now, but this does bring up one question. Exactly how far should a team go to try to win at all costs? I mean, it's gotten to the point where these guys have resorted to any type of trick and any type of foolish, childish games, for lack of a better word, to try and get the upper hand on the opponents.
Definitely. It really is not cool, to say the least, that this took place. But you know what? After the initial ruling took place, then, of course, after the initial ruling took place in which he was suspended for 4 games, then it was appealed. It was taken. Then the appellate courts intervened and ruled on behalf of Goodell.
Yep.
So the suspension that was overturned by Judge Berman was then overturned by the appellate courts, so ruling in Goodell's favor, therefore keeping the original decision of Tom Brady's suspension. Tom Brady had a choice. Could he appeal, take this all the way to Supreme Court, or basically just deal with the consequences and go with the first 4 games?
Well, in his case, he decided to deal with it like a man, so he's going to be benched in favor of Jimmy Garoppolo for the first 4 weeks, and this really puts a lot of focus on that young man because he's been there as Tom Brady's backup for a good 3 or 4 years now. Actually, this is his 3rd season coming up, so it's gotten to a point where he doesn't really have to do too much, but do just enough to prove that he can be a capable player in this league for about 4 weeks.
Yep. I know. And not only that storyline that took place, we also had a lot of players moving from other teams.
As always.
Yeah, we had Marvin Jones, Mohamed Sanu leaving Cincinnati to go to their respective teams. We also had Alex Mack and Mitchell Schwartz leaving the Cleveland offensive line.
And we also had an official farewell to an all-time great, Peyton Manning.
That's right. After his illustrious career that began in 1998, in 1999 with the Indianapolis Colts, the place that he built, which is now Lucas Oil Stadium, and leaving off in the sunset with another Super Bowl victory ring after winning Super Bowl 50 with his now beloved Denver Broncos.
Yeah.
Huge way to cap his season off. 5 MVP awards. 5 MVP awards. 1 Super Bowl MVP, 2 Super Bowl championships, 4 appearances, the record for the most wins, the record for the most completions, total yards, everything basically. It was just amazing what he did for his career. But, not only that those storylines that we're seeing, how about we go from Deflategate, how about to Anthemgate, if you will?
Brother.
As I like to,
As if this hasn't been beaten to death enough. Long story short, Colin Kaepernick has basically created a domino effect. It all started with that last preseason game against San Diego when he refused to stand for the national anthem. He was caught on camera sitting on the bench while the Star-Spangled Banner was being played. And what happens? After the game, the reporters swarm all over him, saying that he's not going to stand for a flag that continues to glorify the oppression of all minorities. When you think about it, he did exactly what he wanted to do. He made his choice. We got to deal with it. But when you think about it, long story short, should we even be surprised anymore? This guy is the latest athlete to raise the profile of a problem that continues to plague this country, and that is big-time racism. Are black people or Latinos or Asians or Arabs or any other minority that calls this country home supposed to just sweep this under the rug and pretend that nothing is happening? And what's even worse is that there are some people who are not even wanting to acknowledge the problem.
well, you got to look at it from two camps of perspective. There's one camp, of course, that feels as though that what Colin Kaepernick did was, and I know this might upset some people, but some people felt what he did was disrespectful, that he's disrespecting the flag, our country, and the people, the men and women who fight for our country. Even though Colin Kaepernick has gone in the air and said that, it doesn't matter. To a fan, doesn't matter. Even if you say that you're not disrespecting those soldiers, in their mind, that's what they're gonna how they're gonna feel it. Or take it as a disrespect and a slight against his country. While there's another school of thought, like you just said, there are people who feel as though they have been oppressed, that their voices have been minimized, and that their rights are not as bountiful as they thought they would have in this country. I know, I understand from both points of view. At the end of the day, though, we just have to, we may not agree with what he did, but this country is about freedom of expression. The right
and he exercised that right to freedom of speech. And when I said he created a domino effect, he really did, because one of his own teammates, one of the guys on the Seahawks, also decided to kneel down instead of stand up for the playing of the national anthem. And as it turns out, the Seahawks are going to do the exact same thing for their season opener on Sunday. Every single Seahawk is going to kneel instead of stand for the national anthem.
And not only that, last night in the season opening game of the 2016 season, Brandon Marshall, the linebacker, who was just given a nice 4-year contract extension by Denver, kneeled and was just dropped by one of his sponsors, a municipal credit union. So you have to expect that even though they have that right, don't be surprised if some of these players may lose their sponsorships.
Let me put it this way. These people are no dummies. They know exactly what they're doing and what the repercussions are, but they're willing to risk everything just to make a stand.
It's good to make a stand, but at the end of the day, these players it's a business, and their agents are going to let them know. Those agents rely on that 10-15% they earn from their client. And if their client is doing anything to jeopardize that business, they're going to let them know point blank and simple. I love the fact that you have this ability to use your freedom of expression, but baby, you're going to screw me and cost me some dollars as well as yourself. So, and not only that, they're going to be people that are counting on that money too as well. So there's a lot at stake, yes. But you know what? And at the end of the day, they have the right to do whatever they want to do. And you know what? Let's not beat this story to death anymore and talk about this anymore.
It's gotten to the point where it's become very, very aggravating right now.
How about some of the speaking of money and contracts, Drew Brees got a new contract extension, a 2-year guaranteed $44 million deal for the guy who's had 5,000 yards in the last 5 years. He's really he's a test of durability in this league.
He's also an example of overcoming a lot of odds. I mean, think about it. Coming out of high school in Texas, was not very heavily recruited. Only Purdue University gave him a shot. You know why? Because, for one, he's 5'11". Quarterbacks of his height and weight are not supposed to last in the NFL. He's lasted 15 years, and he's won a championship. And he's this close to breaking a whole bunch of records in the NFL. That's a testament to not only what kind of player he is, but also what kind of heart the man has.
Definitely. And the fact that, the Saints gave him an opportunity. He won the Super Bowl for them.
He's become an icon in the city of New Orleans. There's a reason why his number 9 jersey is one of the best-selling jerseys in the league right now.
Exactly. And the Saints, you know what? Considering the cap issues they were going to have next year, the cap hit with his contract, he was due to make only $19 million this year. Now he's going to make over $20 million on this year's contract alone. He also had a $30 million signing bonus on top of all this. I would love to make that kind of money after signing a contract, but that's besides the point. How about Emmanuel Sanders? He also got a new contract extension after the Denver Broncos took care of Von Miller, of course, rightfully so, because after all, Von Miller was the reason why they won Super Bowl 50 and became the MVP. Then they took care of Brandon Marshall. They also helped out, Now they want to take care of another guy, Emmanuel Sanders, who's a good slot receiver, somebody that you can plug in, who can make those deep threat plays alongside Demaryius Thomas. Not one of the most elusive, not one of the greatest receivers in the world, but I feel at times one of the most underrated. So right there, you know what? I'm happy for him. And how about the new rules that are in place? The 25-yard line will be the starting point after touchbacks. Is that an issue, or is that?
I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue, because when you think about it, there are still going to be certain returners that are going to still take the ball out of the end zone, thinking that they have a shot to get a lot more than just the automatic 25 yards this time.
I honestly think there are going to be times where kick returners are not even going to bother even taking the ball out anymore, because they're going to be like, why do I have to even return the ball when I get 25 yards to start off with? That's what my issue with. And I want to see how many times this happens during the season. By the way, this is only a trial run rule.
Yeah.
Just like last year with the 33-yard kickoff for extra points, that's now a permanent rule because of how successful and made the game better last year. A new rule that's also being introduced, 2 unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, and you're out.
Yeah, which I think is a really good idea. It can crack down on a lot of the atrocities that are going on in this game.
And the reason why this rule even came to be was the Carolina-New York Giants game last year and the WWE-style match between Odell Beckham and Josh Norman. And why do I say that? Because honestly, this could have been in a WWE ring.
It's funny that you mention all of the changes that took place with players finding new addresses. Josh Norman signed a big fat contract with the Redskins. He now has to face Odell Beckham Jr. twice this season, and already Josh Norman is popping off at the mouth talking trash about Odell Beckham.
Which is not surprising, because that's Josh Norman's specialty, is knowing how to get inside a player's mind. He's one of those cornerbacks that not only can shut the ball, but shut down, and it can be a shutdown corner, but can talk trash. And that's what he's going to try and do. He's going to try and do this to Odell. Now that he knows there's new rules in place, he wants Odell to hit him so badly that he gets knocked out.
Yeah, but let's see what happens if, for some dumb reason, one of those guys really does lose their head for no reason, and they wind up wanting to literally pick a fight, which they should not even be picking in the first place.
Either way, it should make for some compelling television. And the international games, that are coming up. In the past years, we've seen the NFL expand already into London, England, even though, honestly, I'm not for it for the fact that I got to get up at 9:30 in the morning to watch these games, for one thing. 2, the fans don't sell out the stadiums that are in London. 3, it's London, England. The only football they like is on the pitch with 11 players on each side, with a soccer ball that's black and white. Not a aerodynamic football. They don't care for the pigskin. They like the soccer ball.
Exactly.
Why are you trying to ram down American culture down their throats?
They're doing all they can to try and globalize the game. In their defense, there are actually a couple of pro-American football leagues that are taking place in Europe now. There's a league in Germany. There's a league, I think, in the UK. There's a league in France. A couple of other leagues that are taking place in Spain. So when you think about it, because of our game, it's become expanded, so to speak, to certain parts of Europe. And
But
it's
we
not
tried
just Europe.
that.
Yeah, it's not just Europe either. They're going to bring the first regular season game to Mexico. Well, not the first regular season game, but the latest regular season game is going to be in Mexico City later in the year.
Yeah, November 21st. It's going to be Raiders-Texans, which is huge, especially Houston. Houston has a huge Mexican population right
Exactly
there.
right. Although the majority of the Mexican population that's in Texas is huge fans of the Cowboys. But there are certain Texans fans that are there.
And you know what? The Raiders, and against the Raiders too, this is going to be fun to watch. And you know what? The Raiders were the first team to hire a Hispanic.
That's right. They hired Tom Flores all those years ago.
Yep. So right there, this should be a really fun game. And they're even bringing a game to China, I hear, for 2018.
Yeah.
Which, the NBA has done so well in China. They thought, why not try with the NFL?
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's go to the Week 1 games of the week, starting off with last night's kickoff between the Carolina
Panthers and the Denver Broncos. It was a rematch of the 50th anniversary of the Super Bowl. And all things considered, new quarterback on the Broncos, defense basically staying as is with the exception of Malik Jackson, who's now with the Jacksonville Jaguars. This was a much better, much more competitive game than it was all of 7 months ago. Because when you think about it, the kid that started for the Broncos last night really didn't do that terribly. I mean, granted, there were turnovers in each of their first two possessions, and I think he could do a little bit better job of deciding when to get rid of the ball, like what happened when he got sacked near the end of the game. But overall, this kid played okay football. But as always, it's the Broncos' defense, especially in the fourth quarter, that rose to the occasion in this one.
Yes, and you know what? At the end of the day in this game, it came down to that field goal, the 50-yard shanked left. And you know what was the smartest part of that entire progression, if you will, or in that entire sequence, was when Gary Kubiak froze Graham Gano when he hit the ball wide right to begin with, taking that timeout, and then making him go for the field goal again, hitting it wide. The snap was way too high. That was the problem. The snap was too high, and because of that, it forced Gano to have to really improvise with that kick, and therefore it shanked left from 50 yards. When in practice, before the game took place, he was able to hit from 60 yards. This is the Mile High Stadium. People can, if you're a really good kicker, you can hit from 60, 65 yards in this place.
The air is so thin in Denver that it's basically turned into a kicker's paradise having to play in that stadium. And even in years past, when the old Mile High Stadium was in the Denver area, it was almost automatic that any kicker would be able to send one through the uprights. But last night, because of the poor mechanics between the long snapper and the holder, that's why the Panthers wound up losing a game that, quite frankly, they should have won. They blew that game big time.
They had a 17-7 lead going into the half, and the reason why, the first two possessions, the Carolina defense came to play. This was a defense that led the league with 39 takeaways, and already they had two out the gate. You talk about the first fumble by Devonta Booker at the Carolina 23-yard line, caused by Luke Kuechly, one of the best middle linebackers in the game, who literally can get you 120-plus tackles a season. And then the second one was Ben Benwaricky, who got the interception off of Siemian's tip pass at the Panthers' 10-yard line. He was one of the best. He had 4 interceptions last year to go with Kurt Coleman's 7. Those two form a really good dynamic duo in that secondary.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, Denver really came to play in the fourth quarter, including C.J. Anderson. He was primarily the reason why they won.
Yeah.
Besides that pass to Trevor Siemian, but it was really C.J. Anderson that I think played the biggest role for Denver, and that's why they came away with the first victory.
And you could see what Denver's game plan was. They were going to be out there to do the same thing that they did to Cam Newton at the Super Bowl, and that was trying to put as much pressure on him as possible. Well, they put so much pressure on him that he wound up coming away with his bell rung, literally. I mean, he
Three
took
times.
3 different shots to the head in that game, one of which resulted in offsetting penalties, one of which was a helmet-to-helmet hit for roughing the passer.
And intentional grounding.
And also intentional grounding.
That pretty much offset the penalties right there in the fourth quarter. And then how about the 8 hits he sustained, too? That offensive line for Carolina has to do a better job, especially the right tackle, Simmons. He's got to do a better job protecting Newton because he is the franchise QB. Yep. You do not want Anderson coming on the field. You need him to play. But the NFL, the doctors, everybody screwed up in that game, including the referees. Gene Steratore is usually one of the best in the league. I think did a piss poor job when it came to his team did a piss poor job in terms of not throwing the flags when they should have been thrown. Yeah. But all right, let's go. There's so much we can talk about the opening game, but let's get into the rest of the week 1 game starting at the Meadowlands. We got the New York Jets at home taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. Second year in a row, the Jets start week 1 at home against a Cleveland team, against an Ohio team.
Yeah. And this is a game that quite frankly the Jets need. And this is one of the many games that are on the schedule that the Jets are going to have a really tough time with. It's been said they have the 7th toughest schedule in the league this year. And look at all of the teams that the Jets have to play. In addition to their division opponents, the Patriots, the Bills, and the Dolphins twice, the Jets have the Bengals, the Browns, the Steelers, and the Ravens. The entire NFC West, which is the Rams, the Niners, the Cardinals, and the Seahawks, and a couple of other teams. But first things first, the Jets have to go up against a Bengals team that's really, really solid offensively with Andy Dalton at quarterback. A.J. Green is one of his receivers.
Yeah, but and
they're also very underrated defensively.
They are. They got Carl Dunlap and Geno Atkins. Which is unbelievable to say the least for these two guys. Dunlap had a franchise record 13.5 sacks. Atkins had 40 sacks over the last 5 years. They're missing Vontez Burfict for the first 3 games because of a little suspension for substance abuse. And, of course, for his personal picadillos at times.
Yeah.
Including the reason why Cincinnati didn't win last year, because Burfict.
Yeah.
Got that roughing passer penalty on him, personal conduct penalty that helped Pittsburgh win that game. And then if you think about it, this is a season, this has to be a good season for Marvin Lewis. The hot seat is on him.
Yeah, he has lasted 13 years with the same team, the Cincinnati Bengals. In fact, he is, I think, the second longest tenured head coach in the NFL behind Bill Belichick.
And in order for his team to start off on the right foot, it's not going to be Jeremy Hill and Gio Bernard, who are one of the best duos that can run and catch out of the backfield. Because they're talking about a Jets defense that's in the top 5 in terms of rushing defense. It's really going to come down to Brand LaFell. I hate to say that because, everybody's going to say A.J. Green, but he's going to get double coverage by Darrelle Revis and probably by one of the other safeties for the Jets. So really, the onus will be on Brand LaFell catching a lot of passes. So if you have him in fantasy leagues, I would suggest maybe picking him up for some guys. He's going to get a lot of targets his way this week. It's not Tyler Eifert. He's out for the week with that ankle injury.
And on the other side of the ledger for the Jets, whereas their front 7 is one of the best in the league, their secondary, if you take away the guy over at safety, which is Darrelle Revis.
Cornerback.
At cornerback, I should say. You take away Darrelle Revis from his spot, the Jets are very, very mediocre to average in the secondary. This is where the Jets' front 7 has to come in. They have to do a good job of putting pressure on Red Dalton. And offensively, the Jets now have Matt Forte as their every down running back. Chris Ivory's now in Jacksonville. And Matt Forte, some say he's actually a better player than Chris Ivory, whereas Ivory was really, really physical. Forte has a little bit more foot speed and cutback ability. So this is where Matt Forte not only has to get a lot of carries, but Ryan Fitzpatrick really needs to make good use of his receiving core, consisting of Brandon Marshall and also Eric Decker. And the Jet offensive line, which I think is very, very suspect right now, has to neutralize those down linemen that the Bengals have.
Without a doubt. This is where the Jets are going to have to really come to play this week. This is where the Jets are going to honestly, in terms of their defense, they're going to have to do a good job. I still say LaFell, because they will be able to take care of Gio Bernard and Jeremy Hill. I really believe that. And they're going to take care of A.J. Green. But Brandon LaFell is somebody to look out for. And another thing, too, is the Jets' O-line is going to do a good job trying to contain the likes of Atkins and Dunlap. Mm-hmm. That's really where the matchup is going to come at. If that O-line cannot stop that Cincinnati defense, it's over.
Yeah.
And you know what? As much as I know I'm wearing this Jets jersey, and it's going to be hard for me to do this, but folks, I got to go with Cincinnati to win this week by 3 points.
You know, Ryan Fitzpatrick foolishly held out for a long, long time over the summer. He had to settle for a 1-year deal. If he really wants to earn a big, big contract, games like this are what he has to win. Whether he does that or not, it just remains to be seen. But this is the game where he has to start earning his money.
Who would you pick to win this game?
I couldn't even begin to tell you, but I will say this.
But whatever
team does win, it's going to be the team that makes the big play at quarterback that's going to decide this one.
Oh, man.
And that's
I hope you're not going to do this all season when you're not going to pick.
No, I can't even do it. I can't do it. But I will say this. I'll take Andy Dalton over Ryan Fitzpatrick any day of the week because at least Andy Dalton has made the playoffs. He just needs to win a playoff game.
He just picked Cincinnati, folks. All right, you got the New York Giants visiting the Dallas Cowboys. This is the second year in a row they're playing each other week 1. Here's the difference right here. You got Dak Prescott, the 4th-round rookie at Mississippi State, starting in place of Tony Romo. And I'll tell you, this is going to be the game where Dak Prescott is going to have the game of his life. Yes, he had a great preseason, 7 total touchdowns, 5 which were passing. But let's not forget, he did this against second and third teamers.
Thank you.
He didn't do this against first-team offenses for the most time. Yes, he made great throws, but then again, preseason. Now this is the regular season. He's under the lights in a late afternoon game against a revamped Giants defense that spent over, I think, close to over $100 million on their defense.
Yeah, they had such a busy off season trying to upgrade that defense, which they should have because their defense was a joke to watch last year. But now they've added a whole bunch of guys. They added guys like Janoris Jenkins, and also the guy that they wound up getting from the Jets as well.
Damon Harrison.
And
Olivier Vernon from Miami.
But now...
And Eli Apple drafting him out of Ohio State.
Drafting Eli Apple from Ohio State. So the Jets... the Giants... This is a game that the Giants should win because, for one, on paper, the Giants are the better team defensively. 2, they have the better quarterback. You compare Eli Manning, who has 2 Super Bowl rings, to Dak Prescott, who, quite frankly, just got here. I mean, it's one thing to play against second and third stringers, but this is his NFL debut in the regular season. Can this guy really, really get a big win against a division rival, a hated division rival like the Giants? This is the game where Dak Prescott can prove exactly where he belongs in this league. And it's not like he's working with some Tom, Dick, and Harry offensively. He's got Ezekiel Elliott to hand off to.
You know, he's the first rookie starting running back since Derek Lassie in 1993. Not even Tony Dorsett or Emmitt Smith started as a rookie.
And he's also got Dez Bryant to throw to coming out of the slot. So when you think about it, this is a game that the Giants should win, but this has the makings of a classic trap game here because the Giants not only are superior at quarterback and defensively, but this should be a game